I think our candidates can come up, please, and you can choose your chairs. We want to thank you very much for attending tonight's candidate forum. There are 7 candidates running for state school superintendent. We have 4 on the Democrat ticket and 3 on the Republican ticket. All 3 Republicans were invited this evening, but Brian Kelly did not respond to the invitation. So he's like, where's Waldo? All right. We have the rules for the candidates, and they get 5 minutes, 3 minutes for their opening statements. They each get 2 minutes to answer their questions and 30 seconds for rebuttal. And our very nice timekeeper is the young lady in the orange dress, Samantha Jones, who is the state committee member. And she has cards, so we're going to ask you to please keep your eye on the timekeeper. If, by chance, somebody happens to go too long, I will do this, and our friend at the back will cut the mic. Yes, just like that. Thank you. He has all the power. Tonight's questions have come from the audience, and I need them up here, if we have them. Can't have a candidate forum without the questions. And as you came in, there were index cards when you entered, and by now you should have put down your question and submitted them, and then I will sort them by theme. This is not to eliminate anybody's question, but some of you may be asking duplicate questions, so we'll take one question out of a particular theme. And then I will alternate between the candidates. They will come up to the podium and answer from here so that they can hear. And I would just caution you to watch the leg on this microphone. All right. Primary election is Tuesday, June 24th. And you will have the choice, if you're a Republican, between 3 candidates, if you're a Democrat, between the 4 candidates. The general election is set for Tuesday, November 4th, 2014. The question, are they sorted? Not really. We're going to do the opening statements, and I will look through the questions, and just randomly here, I'm going to do alphabetical. So that puts the incumbent, Jana Barisi, first. Thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. And let me also thank the 912 Project, the Tulsa 912 Project, for sponsoring this. It's very important. We have an opportunity for you to be able to see the candidates in person and hear the issues. I have been here before visiting the 912 Project, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back. I've been involved in conservative causes for many, many years and have worked with many of you on party issues and helping to get our candidates elected. And I remember times of knocking doors. I remember the time that the Republicans took over the Senate. That was a big night, and worked on that, and worked on the Keating campaign and so many other things. And I'm just here to thank you for that, but then also to ask you to consider me for re-election for this position. I am the only candidate that will continue to push forward on the reforms and not roll them back. And so I will tell you that my concern is that the bureaucrats, the education bureaucrats and the teachers unions really are trying to get hold and get control of education in the state of Oklahoma. I have shown persistence through time at focusing on so many different things, but let me talk to you about 3 main things. The first one is reading. I know we are all concerned about standards and the rewrite of the new standards, but the biggest problem in education in Oklahoma right now is reading. Folks, if you can't read, you can't do anything else. And we have an education system that gets 4 years to get a 3rd grader past a 1st grade level, to where they're doing more than just sounding out words, because the kids that fail the test are just doing that. They're still sounding out words. And if they can't get a child past that level in 4 years, ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing wrong with the child, but there's everything wrong with the system. I promise that I will continue to push for that, to push for strong reading standards, work with Governor Fallin on that. The next one is accountability. The A through F grade card has done a lot to improve schools in the state and will continue to do that. It even got a liberal state senator bounced out of office. It was running for the presidency of the Oklahoma City School Board because she said she didn't think having a D was that bad of a deal. And so it has been very helpful there. We're going to talk to you about the truth about testing. I know you're hearing a lot about testing. I think it's important to really put some truth behind that and some clarity. And finally, I want to talk to you a little bit about parent education choice. I think it's very important our parents have a chance to continue to choose for their children. Certainly in the Lindsay Nicole Henry bill, that has been very successful, and we're going to continue to support that and expand those numbers and make sure that parents have additional choices coming in my second administration. So thank you very much, and I appreciate being here tonight.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It is really a privilege and honor to be here and to have the chance to address such a great group. And I know that everyone here is very informed and engaged, and that is how we need to have this kind of engagement spread throughout our state, because then we really are able to effectively hold our elected officials accountable and work with them so that we can move forward. So my name is Joy Hoffmeister. I was appointed by Governor Fallin to sit on the State Board of Education, representing this area, actually, U.S. Congressional District 1. When I arrived there, I arrived with a background, and that background is that first of all, I married a preacher. We've been almost married 30 years, and later he went to seminary and then later to law school and is now a judge. So it's a little different path. But when I first entered that board experience, I realized that I was really the only one who had practical experience in the classroom. And I have a background in public education. Then after we had our 4 kids, I tried to get back into the classroom when a business opportunity landed in my lap, and it's called Kumon Math and Reading. So for the last nearly 15 years, I've spent that time working on very high standards, which start with a deep, deep foundation. And it is very powerful what can happen with parent engagement. And we can do a lot if we look at the real, secret to great schools, and that is parent engagement. And so as I became a board member, I began to see missed opportunities to work with those who were going to implement reform. And so after our legislature saw many things unravel and begin to not be effectively implemented, they began to get frustrated as well. And so we're very proud to say that 45 of our state House and Senate members have done something very unprecedented, and that is to step forward and say publicly that they're part of our team and that it's time for new leadership. So what are we going to do, and how are we going to do it? Well, first we have to address the testing. We are focused on high-stakes testing to a point where it's toxic. We need less time testing and more time on instruction. Second, we need an A to F grading system that works. We don't have that now because we didn't listen to those who could have made it work. So let's fix it. And finally, I used to say we need to repeal Common Core, but now I say we need to make sure we don't rebrand and that we have someone we trust who will help write the standards and oversee that process so that they are Oklahoma-driven, reflect Oklahoma values, and they will effectively work to close the skills gap in Oklahoma where that exists, and we can do that if we move forward together. Thank you.
We have a very unique audience. We have a lot of very individual questions, so the sorting is a little difficult. But as you would imagine, Common Core was the bulk of it. So we'll start off with the issue that's on everybody's mind is on Common Core. For both candidates, and since we began with you, we'll start with Joy Hoffmeister first for the answer. Several districts have publicly stated they will stay with Common Core curriculum. How will you enforce Common Core, despite the passage of House Bill 3399? How will you enforce Common Core? I'll leave the question here. Your timekeeper is there.
Okay. All right. How will I enforce, do you mean House Bill 3399, the repeal of it? Okay. Very good. Well, I think that, yes, we do have many districts that have spent a lot of resources, professional development, time, working to follow the law that we had in place. And that law we had because of the insistence and leadership of Janet Barisi and those who were out to chase race to the top dollars. And then when Janet Barisi took over that position, she made sure that we moved forward and didn't listen to those who had concerns. So we can't make that mistake twice. And the way I will work is to understand that those who were working to be prepared and were doing what they were asked to do did lead in professional development. I think in the teaching profession, nothing is wasted when it comes to professional development. And that is something that we'll be able to use no matter what the standard is or the name that goes with it. But we have to have a commitment to not simply go through a ceremonial process that lands us right back where we are, now. And that means bringing people together who have expertise in the writing of those standards so that it reflects Oklahoma values as well as the high standards we need. And that is going to take a process that Oklahomans have confidence in, or we will not be able to implement successfully even those. So this is about leadership, it's about trust, and it's about listening and an inclusive, collaborative type of leadership. That's what I've done for the last 14 and a half years, and there's no reason for me to change now. But if we don't move forward with a leader who will listen to people and not dismiss, then we are right back where we started.
Well, I think we'll get a couple opportunities to expand on this issue. I think the question, though, is how will I make sure that we implement all the components of 3399, and I think that's a very important question. And I was disturbed when I heard some superintendents and some educators say, we're going to continue to teach the Common Core. I have already called together, and we had for 2 days this week, if you will, a convening of math teachers and of English teachers, because my first concern is that we get teachers ready to teach in the fall. And what they will teach is the past standards. Those are the standards that were in place prior to the legislature adopting the Common Core in 2010. And so as I sat with those teachers, they were amazing. They just dug right in. They said, you bet. And they're helping to develop curriculum mapping and instructional supports and helping us with professional development on teachers and making sure that they are going to be teaching past. I was very clear with them. I said, the Common Core is dead. Probably said it about 3 times. I said, schools this year will teach past. They will be assessed on past, and so it's necessary. But what I have done is I've asked teachers to talk to us about critical content. I've said, I'm going to flip the model on all of you. And I'm going to ask teachers to write the item specification. Some of you are teachers in the room, and you know what that means. I said, give us a draft of item specifications about what critical content is, and we'll do assessment boundaries. And from there, we'll take a look at the existing test items that we already have for the past standards, and we'll work together to develop this assessment. That gave them a lot of excitement and a lot of hope on how to do this. Now, later on, I hope to talk to you about the rewrite process and the infrastructure we're building for that. And I'm pretty excited about it, about how we're going to be doing this. And the going theme is, I need you. And we'll have some ways that you can sign up to be a part of this after this meeting. And I'm very serious. We need you. Thank you.
All right, we'll have another couple of more questions on Common Core since there were some that were a little bit different for both candidates, and the first one to answer will be Superintendent Barisi. Please explain the differences, if any, between the Common Core state standards and college and career ready as defined in House Bill 3399 and the ESEA waiver.
Well, we're getting into the weeds here. You know, right, 2 minutes. Essentially, college and career ready, we have found, as we've already begun discussions about this, that there is no agreement between career tech and higher ed and common education and the Commerce Department, because they're going to be involved in it too, and parents and teachers. No one can agree on exactly what that is. So we're going to get everybody in the room, and that's actually job one. We are going to come out with a common definition and some founding principles about what college and career ready. As I told my staff, because we met the week before the governor signed the bill, because I knew she was going to sign it, and I said, tell me what your vision is for a student graduating from an Oklahoma high school. What's in their head, what's in their heart, and what's a part of their fiber. Because one of the most important things about rewriting these standards is that we put Oklahoma values and Oklahoma character into this. In other words, Oklahomans understand perseverance and grit and tenacity. And we're going to be building that into this. And so I'm so excited about that. I have put a phenomenal woman at the lead for all of this. And her name is Terry Burkeen. She has been our state literacy director throughout the state. Her name may be familiar. Her son, Josh, was one of the authors of the bill. And I've told Terry, no big deal, you just have to plan 2 Normandy invasions. But Terry, what we have done is divided the state up into 12 regions. That's where you come in. We need you out of your regions to be a part of this process. We'll talk about it a little bit more in the future. I'll be glad to talk to you about it afterwards. But it's an opportunity as the process goes forward over the next couple of years to do that give and take, for you to look at things and review them. Come to the department if you want. But since we want so much participation, we're also going to need to do some of this regionally, so everybody's not traveling to Oklahoma City all the time, trying to make this as convenient as possible. So I look forward to visiting with you about that.
All of that sounds wonderful. But the problem is that we've had 3.5 years to vet this in Oklahoma, and we didn't do that. We could have listened earlier to those who had concerns, but we dismissed them. And that was what led us to be at this point right now where we are in a crisis. Thankfully, our governor did sign House Bill 3399. And thankfully, we had legislators who listened to the people. But the process has to be one that Oklahomans have confidence in. All of these plans, I mean, I hope we sure do get that right under the next 6 months. But the issue is we've had processes like this before. We've seen that with other standards. And then at the end of the process, there's a copy and paste of something that was already pre-planned, and we went through a ceremonial process and wasted time and valuable resources to gather people together for that. So it became really a charade. The people, I don't believe, are interested in that anymore. We have to have authentic leadership that will listen even to those who do not have a same idea as our own self. Because it's important to understand that we are working to understand how things will work in rural, urban, and suburban areas, and it's different. And without that kind of ongoing communication, we are not going to be able to move forward successfully. That's what this race is about.
Superintendent Barisi would like a rebuttal, so we need 30 seconds.
Thank you. Actually, people are really excited about this. We actually have phone calls coming in and emails coming in of people volunteering, wanting to be a part of it. And we have information for you to volunteer in this. They are very, very excited about this. This is real possibilities. When I talked to Governor Fallon about this back in April, I said, Governor, this was something that the legislature passed that they thought would be good, but Obama has hijacked it. The federal government has hijacked it. I said, Governor, no matter what happens on 3399, let's just rebuild, let's rewrite. And she agreed.
15 seconds.
All right. And on April the 8th, that was the day that we did meet in Tulsa, and we had our very first debate. And at that time, we had a question: do you support Common Core? And our current state superintendent said, "Sometimes I'll tell you what you don't want to hear, but I will always tell you the truth." And then she said, "I support the Common Core." Now, I'm not sure what to believe, because what we have is actions, and that's what I can see. And we need to move forward.
All right, thank you. We're going to ask one more question on Common Core, then we'll get to state funding. Okay, now that Common Core has been repealed, one way or another, I guess, how do we replace Common Core aligned textbooks that our students use? As a retired teacher, I know curriculum, textbooks, etc. drive standards. So she went first, so you'll be first this time.
All right. Let's make sure I'm answering the question fully. All right, so now that Oklahoma has repealed Common Core, how do we replace the Common Core aligned textbooks that our students use? All right, so retired teachers asking this. And really it was the textbooks, the concern of that. However, I know that we have issues where we are setting standards in the future that are going to reflect Oklahoma-driven standards that will be high. The issues that we've had before are going to be something that have to be avoided, where we are finding books that are going to align with Oklahoma standards. However, the past standards are something that was just recently here. You know, they're part of 2010. And there are certainly going to be, I think, a movement throughout our nation where there will be others who also say, we want to stand up and say that what was voluntarily adopted at one point when it was a concept called Common Core, and now that that has been developed and other states see and follow the lead of Oklahoma, there will be more and more momentum so that we do have textbooks that will really answer some of the concerns that we saw coming when we weren't using the real foundational approach to having a deep foundation in learning. Instead, what we were doing was complicating, trying to apply what students didn't know yet. And it's important to have the deep foundation if we're going to be able to be competitive in the future. That takes time, it can't be rushed, and it takes a rich learning environment in a classroom. And there's a whole lot of reasons that I hope we go into some testing with conversations so we can address that too, because it looks like I'm going to be out of time here in a second. But this is a concern, yet Oklahoma has an opportunity to lead.
Well, that is the question that was part of the conversation of our state textbook committee that had one of their meetings today in the department, and there was a lot of buzz going on about that. You know, it's really amazing. We're writing Oklahoma standards for Oklahoma kids using Oklahomans. And Oklahoma always comes up with a solution for that. I am confident, just as, you know, I told the governor, I said, when David went into battle and he tried to put on Saul's armor, the battle just didn't work because he had on the wrong armor. And he had to have the armor made for him. And I can tell you, as we're building these, the textbooks will become evident. Will that be Saxon math? Hope so. Hope that makes a resurgence back in the state. That is fantastic. We want to make sure we have a good foundation in each of these textbooks. I believe other states will continue to roll back the Common Core. I think we'll have more friends in on this effort to help us to develop those textbooks. We certainly want to do that. I don't have the perfect solution for that right now. We're days from the governor signing it, but I know the textbook committee has already begun to talk about it. Our teachers that have already come in have already begun to talk about it, and I know we'll come up with the right solution for Oklahoma kids.
All right. This one, the next question and its follow-up are going to be on funding in school districts. This question is, what 3 things would you do to reduce the education budget? Meaning, what 3 things would you advocate to streamline and focus the school process on education specifically without adding another program or a funding campaign? Did you go first? You go first.
You know, one of the things that you find when you run a successful charter school, just as I did when I ran 2 successful charter schools, is that when you're talking about budgeting, instead of talking about funding programs and keeping programs running, you change this up and you ask the question, what do we need to do? What is the judicious expense of our dollars to help every child succeed? That's not being done right now in our school districts, among our school boards. What do we need to do to help each individual child succeed? Then you need strong accountability. You need to make sure that the work that you're doing is correct and is on the right path and that you're appropriately spending tax dollars. You know, you can spend $100 on a reading program or $5,000 on a reading program, but unless you watch how you do on it, you don't know what the best expensive dollar bills are. So we've got to focus down on funding children. Children in our classrooms first, and administration comes second. Because in Oklahoma, our administrators have grown exponentially. Folks, I have superintendents that are being paid outrageous salaries. The highest paid superintendent in the state of Oklahoma last year got $489,000 with a $98,000 early retirement benefit. That's just not right. I have 11 superintendents making over $200,000 a year. Not one of them, not one superintendent in the state has a academic performance clause in their contracts. That's just not right. We need to hold these administrators responsible for the success of children and focus funding on what we can do to help children be successful.
Well, we do have limited resources, and it is government taxpayer money that was being spent on education. So we do have to hold our leaders accountable for how they are spending that money. And it is most important that the money is driven into the classroom so that it can affect our students and their learning, and that has to be our primary aim and goal. We also have to recognize that when we try, which what I've seen happened in the last 3.5 years, Janet Barisi has centralized power and decision-making and control at the State Department of Education. That's a experiment that we know doesn't work in the market. When you take away the ability for local control over how to best use dollars in the classroom, and you take decision-making and you keep it at the State Department, we see waste. We see expenses that are out of touch with what is needed. And I can give you an example of things, but there's one that I think it's small, but I think it's significant. This is something that is an example under Janet Barisi, her decision to do this, and it is a report of how things went this year in her department, the annual report. And it's very expensive. In fact, we know exactly how expensive it is because on the very back, it tells us on the last page that it cost $33,000 to print this, $33,268. And we printed 2,000 copies. And it's got an embossed cover, and this took a lot of money to do. That's a teacher. And I would have to ask, why not have this online, uploaded? And actually, I did ask this question in Guthrie and was told, well, I'll let you answer.
We have been putting the report online, and we continue to put it online. It's just that we got so many complaints of people saying, I actually want to see it for myself. I don't have access to online. So we printed some copies of this for Oklahomans. Folks, over my predecessor, I have cut down my department and personnel and cut expenses to the tune of $250,000 a month over my predecessor. When I came into office, it was a bloated system that had a lot of patronage in it.
That was a rebuttal. All right, we're going to stay on funding for one more question. This is from the audience. My observation of the Jenks and Tulsa public school districts is that they are extremely top-heavy in management. What could you do to discourage this misuse of school funds and to put more money in the classroom? And you're first.
Well, this is some place that I'm familiar with. All 4 of my children graduated, Jenks K through 12, and I did ask that question one time as we were going through a study of school finance on a committee that lasted about 7 months. And I asked, how much is spent? Because I knew there's a law that our legislature has set that caps the amount of money that can be spent on administrative costs. And I recall this, it's been about, and we've got a principal right in our audience who could probably answer this afterwards if you've got questions, but it was about 97% was spent on students. And then there was another piece that takes up the rest of that amount, and I believe it was at 3%, the cost was of the budget was on administrators. So it was eye-opening to me, yet we must be vigilant that if we need to change that law, our state legislature could actually change that cap so that it makes it more restrictive for our schools. But one thing we also need to be careful about is when we pass mandates, someone has to follow those mandates and report. We need to deal with the mandates so that we can use even a portion of that 3% on the classroom. And you know what? Anybody that wanted a copy, what was wrong with saying, I've got an inkjet printer for $99, how many copies do you need? That's a little less money than $33,000.
You know, the education bureaucrats that support my opponent got that law passed with an extremely narrow definition of what an administrator was. It is essentially a superintendent and a couple of people in the central office. The rest are recategorized as related to education services. This is something we struggle with all the time. We do try to get that law passed so you can have a very clear idea about how your tax dollars are being spent. If you take a look at the total amount of individuals that are working on administration, that number is far higher than 3% across our districts. Every time we try to get a truthful answer to that, the education bureaucrats that are supporting my opponent get that bill killed. And that's quite unfortunate because you deserve to know. But ladies and gentlemen, all of that decision about budgeting is determined at the local school district by the local school boards. And people ask me, Superintendent, what are you going to do about these high administrative costs? And I said, do me a favor, run for school board. We need you on your school board, being a good watchdog, asking serious questions, demanding the numbers. I can't tell you how many school board members call me and tell me they can't get straight answers about how money is being spent in their district. So I have put a transparency website up, a connection from our state website that is focusing on that, and we're continuing to add to it and develop it because you deserve to know.
Can I have a rebuttal? Or I don't know where we are in that process.
30 seconds.
Why start now to change that? Why not the last 3.5 years? Why didn't you address this if this was on your mind? That's my question. Someone asked me, why should we change horses in midstream? And I said, because you're drowning and you're on a horse you'll never get to the other side. This is about effective leadership. This is not about blaming, and this is about limiting government.
Thank you. All right, this is similar to funding. This is on school districts, and Superintendent Barisi will answer first. Why does Oklahoma have the fourth largest number of school districts of any U.S. state, 531, and how can we reduce the huge number?
Actually, I've been working on the process of reducing administration costs before I even thought about running for state superintendent, and I've advocated for it every single year. Oklahoma, do a little bit of history here. Oklahoma had over 1,600 school districts at statehood. Can you believe that? And so we've continued to reduce the number of school districts. We have approximately 5 to 8 school districts that close every single year, but that's a decision that is made locally by that local school board at deciding what is best for them. I've offered many opportunities for school districts. Our legislature developed a way that small school district could share an administration. We think that's fantastic. I'm working very hard with the folks at Osage County. They have a wonderful co-op for buying and for co-opting their services. A superintendent of a district with 200 children told me that he can operate now like he has a district of 2,000 children. And so those are the kinds of things we're doing. This isn't about closing schools. This is about reducing administrative costs, the real administrative costs. If we can do that, we can get more money into the classroom. If we're smarter about how we spend our money, then that will do nothing but benefit the children of our state.
In order to effectively do this, where we look to really be more efficient in the way we operate as a state with the number of districts, I think we need to be very careful that we have trust with those legislators. We have to have trust with those school board members who will be making decisions about how to consolidate. And we need to have trust with communities. You know, a bumper sticker answer isn't going to work. We have to understand that we have real lives, real communities, real Main Street, and these decisions have to work to make it so that we can have the best solutions for students. I do think that we do have too many numbers of districts, so that is something that has to be discussed. We can look at the northwest of our state, and they have done a lot of voluntary consolidation over the years, and they're an example. But when I speak with our legislators, they say we aren't going to ever get to have these kinds of discussions until there is a level of trust. That's what's broken. We need a leader who listens, who's inclusive, and collaborates with people long enough to be able to understand how it impacts each community, and then work to incentivize that kind of consolidation in a way that actually helps our students and doesn't harm and have negative consequences. We need to also be careful that we don't trade costs with transportation. So there are many discussions that have to be had, but it begins with bringing people around the table and not trying to force a solution with a closed fist approach.
This next question is a combination of two cards that were submitted having to do with testing and public education, and candidate Hoffmeister, you will answer first. The first part of the question is who would be responsible for tests in Oklahoma next year, and what is your plan for future testing in public education? That's probably similar. My kids currently test for 5 full weeks in April and May. What is the benefit of kids sitting in front of a computer testing for 5 weeks?
All right. Well, I'll tell you this. If I was state superintendent, we wouldn't be with McGraw-Hill right now. And they have had a problem now. We're on the third problem. And we've had the first testing debacle was last year. And then we did not have an advocate who effectively advocated for our state. Instead, we got more tests as part of the deal with their remedy. And that included additional tests for second graders as part of the way we were somehow going to penalize and have some kind of penalty for them that would serve our state. Instead, we ended up with a very small economic penalty. And then we go into this testing year, and here it is again. Same company, second year, second debacle. And now we are at the spring of this year, and the summer is now upon us, and we have testing scores that are coming back with continuous problems where schools are looking at classrooms and seeing identical scores all the way across the board. So something is wrong, and again, it is with the same testing vendor. So we have to have a leader who will fight and stand up for Oklahomans and hold vendors accountable and end it when it doesn't work. And then what are we going to do in the future? I'll tell you what, we are going to spend less time testing. The reason we spend so much time is because of the high-stakes nature of the tests we give in the spring. So there is testing that goes on to get ready for that moment when it's all or nothing for a third grader. We need to have everyone reading at third grade. That's our goal. In third grade, at third grade reading level, in social promotion. There's no argument there. But we need to provide the supports to achieve it, and no one 8 years old should go to school and there should be nothing that nauseates them.
Well, let me stick to the question here. In Oklahoma, a child entering kindergarten until the 12th grade takes on an average of about 2 tests a year. That's it, 2 hours. That is the total amount of time. And so someone had asked a question, why is my child in front of a computer for 5 weeks? I really don't know. My question is, let's get you checking with your school district, because everything else is determined by the school district, is determined by the teacher, is determined by the superintendent. Just 2. That's it, just 2. And we have the schedule outside, and you're welcome to take a look at it at state-mandated testing. I think it's very important to point out the fact that I announced early on that we would be not renewing McGraw-Hill's contract, and certainly we had a meeting yesterday with the procurement department about that, about how we're going to transition out. The items for the PASS assessment, the items that are aligned with the PASS assessment, we own those items already. We have banked those items. And part of the meeting yesterday was talking about how we're going to be making sure that we deliver those items in appropriate forms out to our kids throughout the year. We only put children in grades 6 through 12 online. The rest of the children are on paper and pencil. And we did a tremendous amount of work with our districts, with our IT department in the state, at helping those districts get ready, resolved a lot of problems. And the problem we had this year really was completely with the vendor. We had districts ready to go. We appreciate their participation in the effort at clearing up those IT problems. The problem was with the company and the vendor. And so I am going to be recommending to the state board that they discontinue McGraw-Hill's contract, and we're able to move forward next year delivering Oklahoma items to Oklahoma kids.
The tripod, it gets in the way. All right, this question is going to be on vouchers, and then the next question after that will be on campaigning. And Superintendent Barisi will answer first. Do you believe a child in a failing public school should be given a voucher to attend the school of his parents' choice, public or private?
I want to be absolutely clear here. I support all forms of parent education choice. I think a parent should have a right to decide where their child goes to school. I have been supporting homeschooling since before I began to run for this office, have dear friends who have homeschooled their children, and we have fought to protect homeschoolers the entire time that I've been in office. As you know, I'm the founder of 2 charter schools, helped write the first charter school law in the state. But until parents have full and complete choice about where they take their children, we really will not get quality reform into this state. We've got to have that competition and that type of accountability. That's why the Lindsay Nicole Henry Scholarship is so successful in the state of Oklahoma. The program is growing. It is providing wonderful opportunities to the parents of special needs children. But what happened to the education bureaucrats that my opponent is aligned with? They sued the parents. They sued the parents that wanted to exercise their right. That's unconscionable. And I want you all to understand that it is so very important that parents have the right. One of the fathers that was sued told me, he said, "Superintendent, I've got a daughter with cerebral palsy. I didn't want to cause problems. I just didn't want her to have ride on a bus for an hour and a half. I'll fight to keep their rights, and I'll fight to make sure that each parent has the ability to make a decision." That's what's going to make Oklahoma unique. Thank you.
Well, I do appreciate this question. And I also support a parent, and I will always stand with parents to make the decision for their child's learning environment that is the best for their child. That means supporting school choice. One thing I want to address very clearly, because of misinformation that has been put out by Janet Barisi, knowing full well what my record is, knowing full well that I have my own child in my family, K through 12, who is a special education student. I don't know if my Janet Barisi knows that I've spent 15 years as an advocate in IEP meetings, working to make sure schools gave students the rights that were afforded to them under IDEA, which is the Special Education Act. And I am committed, and it is appalling to see campaigning on special education students to create some kind of real deception about what's real. While I was a state board member, I voted to expand the schools that would be permitted to receive Lindsay Nicole Henry scholarships. And it is wrong to, even as desperate as someone is, to hold on to power when they see that slipping away. It's still wrong to confuse on something so very egregious to think that we would suggest anyone is against, particularly me, against a special education student having their needs met. I have fought for them, and I will fight for all Oklahoma children, not one subgroup.
Sounds like a tactic Barack Obama does. You didn't really see what you saw. Folks, I've got the emails out there. I invite you to come out and take a look at them. About a candidate that says one thing on the outside, but when they're behind closed doors, expresses their rage, has to contain their rage over the acts of the legislature to try to expand this opportunity, who expresses opposition to parents that would be bankrupt if they were sued, to make them cover their own costs and the district recover costs from them, to discourage opportunity.
All right. There will be time to speak to the candidates after this forum if you have further questions. Since we're almost on this subject already, this question's on negative campaigning. Let's see. And candidate Hoffmeister, you'll be first. Janet accuses Joy of being against children with disabilities. Could Joy address why Janet would believe this? Some emails state Joy is primarily funded by Democrats. Can she address this?
Well, there's a whole lot of people out there, and they're really frustrated. And 2,000 of them have given to our campaign. I don't have any idea about backgrounds of individuals that mail checks in, but I will tell you there are a whole lot of people who work very closely with students who are frustrated, and they are at a point where they realize we have to have change, and it's not going to work anymore to have parents shut out, where they're not heard, where there's activists who have concerns who are ignored and dismissed, And we can't stand for this to happen, or we are going to be at a tipping point in Oklahoma where we're losing more and more vibrant professional teachers who are saying that this is not teaching anymore. We haven't addressed the climate issue because all we're doing is getting ready for a test that has such high stakes attached to it that we can't just take it like we used to. Remember the Iowa Basic Skills Test? How about that? That's my idea of a test, where we can measure how our kids are doing across state lines, but we're not really able to have to worry about the high stakes of getting ready for this, and then there's going to be a big negative outcome that happens to a child that's only 8 years old. Now, I think what I'm speaking about is the bill that Katie Hinkey and Gary Stanislawski passed that was allowing a parent back into the process and conversation. We have to have leadership that will listen and work with people because we have to have solutions. Our kids are counting on us. We have to get it right. We have been patient. We have been trying to stand in line for the 3 minutes to speak at the state board meeting.
Again, I invite you to actually check the facts. There are things that are said on the outside, but other things that are gone on behind closed doors. There's the attendance at union functions to try to get contributions. There is contributions by union presidents. The ITBS folks, it's a Common Core aligned test. The website that is for my opponent's for-profit organization that will stand to benefit should we lose the waiver talks about the fact that they are Common Core aligned and international standards aligned. Folks, it is a matter of trust. The person that tells you something on the outside when they're there with you has to be consistently doing the same thing on the inside. I do tell you those things. I also make an effort to make sure that you get the information you need. I want to talk about the future of Oklahoma, but the problem is that I'm battling against someone that really isn't the person that they say they are. And so I look, is this a rebuttal?
You have 15 seconds. Okay.
What you see is what you get, okay? I am an advocate for kids, and I will not be mischaracterized by someone who is desperate. This is about children. And as a state board member, I watched special education students' private information posted online for worldwide consumption and to
the privacy issue is a concern for, I think, for everybody, and the overreach of the schools. This is kind of on the lines of that, and this has to do with parental rights and the appropriateness of education. Do you believe this will be the last question before we go to the questions from the audience, and then we'll have our wrap up. Do you believe parents should be given the right to opt in for sex education instruction for their children? Furthermore, do you believe parents should receive advanced notice for sex education classes and ready and complete access to instructional materials? And Superintendent Breese, you're first.
You know, I appreciate the question. Don't get to talk about this very much, but as I have continued to fight against government intervention, everything from testifying before Congress to demanding more flexibility in our state, all of the work that I have done to reduce testing in the 8th grade because it was excess testing. One of the things I'm most proud of is that right after I got into office, it was probably about 3 weeks after I got into office, an employee of my predecessor came down, and she was the health director. And she came down and asked me to sign a contract that would allow them to implement a grant that the state had received from the federal government. And that grant was on sex education. And she just gave me a little summary of it, and I said, go up and get the grant and get it down here. I want to read this. This is kind of nerve-wracking. As I read through it, I was appalled at what it would require schools to teach 5th graders. We're in mixed company, and I can't tell you the details, but I was appalled. I'd be glad to talk to you about it later outside. But let me tell you what I did. I called her down and I said, give the money back. And she said, what? We can't give federal money back. And I said, yes, we can, and yes, we will. Get this out of here. And quickly thereafter, she left the employment of the department. And we're just fine without a health director in the state. That should be something that's determined by the parents in consultation with their local school. It's not a government program. It's not something that needs to be dictated by the state. Reasonable people can get together and decide. That should be first done in the home between the parent, under guidance with the parents and in consultation with the school district. And I'll continue to fight and make sure that that happens.
Well, it is actually something that we experienced at our school as our kids were growing up, and it was really done in, I think, a very effective and thoughtful way. Parents had a time where they were invited to come and view whatever health types of I think there was something about, and I can't remember what part of it, but it was a health issue. And there were rules about this, and we could come, see exactly what the material was going to be. And in our situation, we decided not to have our children be a part of that. And they were excused from school with no penalty, and it was done in such a way that there wouldn't be embarrassment that they weren't in the room. So there was a real great effort by local school board and local school district to make sure that they respected the rights of parents. You know, this is really an issue of parents being able to make the decisions for their children on education. And it's not just in sex education. This should be about many, many topics and subjects. When we have our kids going to school, we have certain expectations that they'll be safe, that they will be free of all kinds of philosophies we disagree with, and that we have an avenue to take concerns directly to locally elected school board members or to a principal or teacher. And so we have to keep that kind of local control, and respect local control. What I have seen as a state Board of Education member is a weakening and erosion of local control in many areas. But for sure, this is an area where I think many in Oklahoma are very sensitive, and yet we have to be vigilant to keep local control very strong.
So did they answer the question, should there be an opt-in? Should there be an opt-in for parents for sex education? Just a yes or no? Yes. Yes. Parent choice. Thank you.